Hey, hey. So today we're looking at something with an extortionately long title by the looks of it. And first of all, I'm just going to explain what this really means. So Orchestra has the Orchestra Runtime, which is our own harness for running agents and using skills and doing all sorts of magic within our orchestration. But sometimes you want to use skills that other products produce. And what I mean by this is, let's say you're orchestrating things like Fivetran, DBT, Lightdash, something else. And one of those vendors produces a whole bunch of skills for interacting with and managing that service. And you kind of want to give the functionality and know-how to your agents in Orchestra. So we're just going to look at a quick example of doing this with DLT, the ingestion tool. So DLT publish a few skills on an open GitHub repo, and it doesn't really matter how up to date or verified or anything these are. The concept applies to any other repos that you have skills in, your own, open ones, whatever. And the use of this is that we kind of know these people know their products potentially better than a generic agent is going to, or than perhaps you can distill within your own company because they wrote the tool, they should know best. So I've picked this one, which is DLT's way of getting an agent to build a REST API pipeline, which is pretty common for pretty much everybody. Whether you're writing custom Python, using DLT, Fivetran, whatever, sometimes you've got a new system and you just want to connect to it in a new way. And building up connectors for APIs should be ridiculously easy because they're fairly standardized. So how do we use this? First of all, we want the skill in Orchestra itself. So this is what it looks like. I've previously kind of added it in here. You can see it still links back to the original repo when it was last updated and all that sort of magic. And the skill itself is now in Orchestra and registered. But how did it get there? So if we jump into skills and I go to create skill, all it takes is clicking on GitHub. And this doesn't necessarily have to be one of your repositories if it's open. You can just type in the location of a given repository. So in this case, I typed in DLT hub AI harness and the rest of the location, and poof, there we go. I now have somebody else's skill imported into Orchestra. Obviously, the downside of this is you don't control that skill. If they move it, mess with it, change it, you may not know. So use this at your own peril. Once I've created it, I actually just created a fairly generic looking agent that I'm going to call the ingestion builder to give the skill to. So you can see I actually haven't bothered giving it like a system prompt or response prompt or any of that nice stuff. All I've done is attached a whole bunch of kind of Orchestra pipeline related skills that were pre-canned. So things like looking for errors, fixing pipelines. I've added the create REST API pipeline skill that we just saw from DLT Hub. And I've actually given it access to my Databricks account because that's where it's going to want to write this to. And I want to do a little bit of verification with the agent after to make sure everything is looking good. So we've got the skill, we've got the agent. What do we do next? So now that my agent is up and running and has all of the relevant skills, I'm just going to try and trigger that skill somehow. So I'm going to ask a very generic prompt of build a DLT pipeline that ingests data from the Poke API because it's free into my Databricks account and run that in an Orchestra pipeline, ensuring it passes before the agent kind of tells me it's done. Use the Orchestra Demo 2 catalog and the Poke API data schema in Databricks. Obviously, it's going to create the schema if it doesn't exist. But now we'll just kick this off and see how the ingestion builder gets on, building me a DLT pipeline. Awesome. And after a little while, we can see that I have a fairly basic looking pipeline. But the core thing is we've selected a Python task, correct, for running DLT. It's Python based. And it's configured kind of everything I need to run it. On a slight downside, it's written this as inline Python because I didn't give it a Git repo to kind of store code in, which probably would have been better. So I think next time I would kind of instruct it to do that. This also means the kind of connection I'm using is just in the variables here, which I'm obviously not going to show you. And if I'd done it as a Git-based Python script, I could have actually stored those securely, but these are throwaway. Doesn't really matter for this use case here. The main thing is, does this work? Does this ingest Poke API data into Databricks? Well, let's find out. Now, while that's running, this was all very interesting, but it's not very often that you just ingest data, leave it, and be like, yes, that is exactly what I need. So what else can we do here to be a bit more sure and a bit more thorough in our ingestion patterns? Well, I have this pre-made Databricks data quality and volume anomaly agent, which I've been using to, set up things like DBT volume anomalies, look for them in a Databricks way, and otherwise write generic data quality tests that I can run in my account and check that everything looks good. So if we scroll down, we can see that it's actually got a couple of skills related to running data quality checks and looking for table volume anomalies. So what we're going to do is just ask this agent to go and build some data quality checks for the pipeline we just made and see kind of how it gets on and what it creates from that with no real instruction or guidance whatsoever so far. So all I've asked is build a data quality pipeline to test the Databricks tables landed by the DLT pipeline. Once you've confirmed it's working, even if those tests are failing, bring it back to me and we'll have a look. So I kick that off and we'll see how it does. As expected, our ingestion pipeline actually worked, or as not expected, depending on how much you really like ingestion. If we take a quick look, we can see that it's found the kind of API credentials it needed, ran the pipeline, and loaded it into our Databricks account. No jobs have failed, so we should be good to go. And when our other agent finishes, we'll run the data quality pipeline, and that should give us at least some confirmation that these tables are actually there. Though I'm using Orchestra, so I actually don't need to guess. I can look in my assets and see that this table has been created. It has Pokemon in it, and I can kind of see that it's actually been interacted with by our pipelines. So all good. All that's left is to check our data quality. Our Databricks agent has finished, and it's come up with some fairly reasonable looking test gates for us. Things like has some data, the key is not empty, the key is unique, fairly basic integrity checks. And then it's looked at the schema and been like, hey, there's some kind of not null conditions and free range text that I should probably do some checks on, and given us a nice bunch of other tests to run as well. Though obviously in real life, you're probably going to go through these with a bit more of a fine tooth comb and pay a bit more attention than we are here to make sure the data is up to scratch. So if we just run this, see how it looks, then I think we can call this a day. And there we go. Our pipeline ran, and actually a couple of our tests did fail. If we look into why, we can see that these were perhaps the URL-based columns, and they do have some nasty characters in them that we weren't expecting. So we've managed to ingest this data, write some data quality checks for it, and actually test it. And we can already start to see that when we build our DBT models on top of it, there's some things we're going to want to clean or just generally keep an eye out for. So that's that. That's how you can use partner skills within the Orchestra agent runtime to build things both in Orchestra whilst using context from elsewhere, and then how you can just throw Orchestra's runtime with some of our pre-canned skills at some common data engineering problems to build more than just ingestion. You can have some testing, and then even if you want to, just keep going down the pipeline, add transformations, refresh your BI tools, whatever you're looking to do. So give it a whirl, see how you get on, and let us know what you think. Cheers.